The ballroom at Zenith FinTech headquarters buzzed with the kind of energy that only comes from watching someone else get what you've been working toward for years. 200 colleagues in their best corporate armor, regional leadership, nodding from the front tables, and there she was, my wife Vera, adjusting the microphone like she'd been born to stand behind podiums. I'm Silas Orrin, and I've spent the last 15 years perfecting the art of being underestimated. Cybersecurity consultant, the guy who sits in the corner during meetings, taking notes while everyone else performs their little corporate theater. They think I'm just another tech drone pushing papers and monitoring firewalls. They have no idea how much I actually see. Vera cleared her throat, and the room settled into that expectant silence that precedes career-defining moments. She looked radiant up there, her auburn hair catching the stage lights, wearing the navy dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago, back when I still thought we were building something together. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying that practiced confidence she'd been rehearsing in our bathroom mirror for weeks. "This promotion means everything to me, and I couldn't have achieved it without the support of my incredible team." The crowd murmured appreciatively. I watched from my seat in the back row, nursing a whiskey that tasted like disappointment and studying the faces around me. Renee from HR, shooting glances between Vera and someone in the front. Jason, my old friend from the security team, looking uncomfortable in his borrowed tie. And there, at the head table, Marcus Kellor, senior vice president, 43 years old, married with 2 kids, and the reason my marriage had become a carefully orchestrated lie. "I owe it all to my coworkers," Vera continued, her voice gaining momentum, "and especially to my boss for his support at night." A few people chuckled at what they assumed was an innocent reference to late-night project work. My husband never had what it takes. The applause that followed felt like a physical blow. 200 people clapping for my public humiliation, delivered with a smile and wrapped in corporate gratitude. I watched Marcus lean back in his chair, that smug expression I'd studied through surveillance footage for the past 6 months playing across his features. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you time to plan. I stood up, slowly, feeling every eye in the room shift toward me. The applause died as I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. Vera's expression changed from triumph to confusion as I approached the podium. "Silas?" she whispered into the microphone, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "What are you doing?" I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small velvet box tied with a silver ribbon, the kind of box that usually holds jewelry, promises, or apologies. This one held something different. "From your biggest failure," I said, placing it on the podium beside her speech notes. Our eyes met for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for her to see that I knew everything, long enough for me to watch the color drain from her face. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving her standing there with the microphone in one hand and my gift in the other. The ballroom doors closed behind me just as I heard the ribbon being pulled away. The screaming started 30 seconds later. Let me tell you about surveillance. Real surveillance, not the Hollywood version with satellite feeds and facial recognition software. Real surveillance is patience, pattern recognition, and the kind of attention to detail that comes from spending your career protecting other people's secrets. I installed the cameras in my home office 18 months ago after I noticed files going missing from my secure folder. Nothing dramatic, just client lists that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking, trading strategies that appeared to have been accessed outside of business hours, the kind of digital fingerprints that most people wouldn't notice, but I'm not most people. The cameras were small, professional grade, hidden in the bookshelf behind my desk and in the ceiling fixture above my computer. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe I'd been working too hard and forgetting when I'd accessed my own files. I was wrong about the paranoia. I wasn't being paranoid enough. The first footage that made my stomach turn wasn't what you might expect. It wasn't Vera in a compromising position with another man. That came later. It was her, alone in my office at 2 in the morning, photographing my computer screen with her phone. Client portfolios, trading algorithms, merger information that wouldn't be public for weeks. She worked methodically, professionally, like she'd done this before. She had done this before. The timestamp showed she'd been accessing my files for over a year. I spent the next week reviewing months of footage, building a timeline that painted a picture I'd been too trusting to see. Vera's late-night client dinners that lasted until midnight. Her sudden interest in my work, asking innocent questions about upcoming deals and market predictions. The way she'd started dressing differently, buying clothes that were too expensive for her salary, but somehow always appeared in her closet. The affair itself was almost anticlimactic when I finally caught it on camera. Marcus Kellor visiting our house while I was supposedly at a conference in Portland, a conference I'd actually skipped to install additional surveillance equipment. They weren't passionate lovers stolen away by forbidden desire. They were business partners, discussing which of my clients would be most vulnerable to the information they'd stolen. "The Morrison account is worth at least $50,000 if we time it right," Marcus said, adjusting his tie in my hallway mirror. "Your husband's research on their expansion plans is incredibly detailed." "He trusts me," Vera replied, and the casual way she said it made me pause the footage and pour myself 3 fingers of bourbon. "He thinks I'm interested in his work because I want to support his career." "And the compliance investigation?" "Already filed. Anonymous tip about suspicious trading patterns, with documentation that traces back to him. When this breaks, he'll be too busy defending himself to notice where the real information went." That's when I understood the full scope of what I was dealing with. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't even just corporate espionage. Vera and Marcus had constructed an elaborate frame job designed to destroy my career while they profited from my work. The affair was just a bonus, or maybe a way to keep Marcus invested in the plan. I turned off the monitor and sat in my office for a long time, thinking about the woman I'd married and the life we'd built together. Then I started planning. The hotel footage took 3 weeks to obtain. The Marriott Harbor keeps security recordings for 90 days, and their head of security, Tom Bradley, owed me a favor from a consulting job I'd done for his previous employer. Room 847 had been booked under Marcus's corporate account every Tuesday evening for the past 8 months. The recordings showed exactly what I expected. Marcus arriving first, Vera 20 minutes later, both leaving separately after exactly 2 hours. But the real treasure was in the financial records. Marcus had been making personal trades 48 hours before every major company announcement, using information that could only have come from my client files. His timing was impossible without inside knowledge, and the profits were substantial, nearly $500,000 over 18 months. The bribery structure was elegant in its simplicity. Payments routed through Vera's mother's consulting company, Strategic Marketing Solutions, for services that existed only on paper. $15,000 monthly for brand consultation and market analysis. The invoices were professionally prepared, the payments regular as clockwork, the work product non-existent. I documented everything: screenshots, financial records, hotel receipts, trading patterns, email exchanges I'd recovered from Vera's laptop while she slept. By the time I was finished, I had enough evidence to destroy both their careers and send them to federal prison. But prison was too easy. Prison was private, anonymous, forgotten after a few years of good behavior. What they'd done to me was public. That promotion speech was going to be the highlight of Vera's career, the moment she stepped out of my shadow and into the spotlight she'd always craved. I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. The SEC serves subpoenas at exactly 9:47 a.m., 17 hours after Vera's promotion speech. I know the precise time because I'm sitting in my car across the street from Zenith FinTech headquarters, drinking coffee and watching federal agents stream through the glass doors like ants responding to a disturbance in their colony. My phone buzzes with text messages I don't bother reading, missed calls from numbers I recognize and several I don't. The local news vans are already setting up their satellite dishes in the parking lot, which means someone leaked the story exactly as I'd planned. Jason finds me in the lobby of my office building an hour later. He looks like he hasn't slept, which makes sense considering he spent most of the night helping me coordinate the final pieces of what he's been calling Operation Corporate Suicide. The FBI seized Marcus's computer, his phone, and his office files, he reports, settling into the chair across from my desk. Vera's been suspended pending investigation. HR is in full damage control mode. And the trading records? Handed over voluntarily by his brokerage firm. Apparently, they've been monitoring his account for unusual activity since March. Jason grins. Your documentation made their case airtight. They're calling it one of the clearest examples of securities fraud they've seen in years. I lean back in my chair, feeling something that might be satisfaction if it weren't mixed with so much exhaustion. What about the promotion? Rescinded as of this morning. The announcement has been removed from the company website, and they're conducting an internal review of the entire selection process. He pauses. Silas, they're going to figure out the information came from you. I'm counting on it. This is the part Jason doesn't understand. The reason he's been nervous about this plan from the beginning. He thinks I'm trying to expose corruption and protect myself from their frame job. He's not wrong, but he's not seeing the bigger picture either. Vera wanted public recognition. She wanted to stand on a stage and accept applause for achievements she'd stolen from me. She wanted to humiliate me in front of our colleagues and friends, to make it clear that I was the weak link in our marriage, the failure who couldn't give her what she deserved. I gave her a stage, all right, just not the one she expected. My office phone rings, and I recognize the number from Zenith's legal department. Jason raises an eyebrow, but I shake my head. Let them wonder. Let them scramble to figure out how much I know and what I'm planning to do with the information. The truth is, I'm just getting started. The real beauty of my plan isn't the federal investigation or the criminal charges that are coming. Those are just the opening act. The real show starts when Vera realizes that everything she thought she'd built, her career, her reputation, her future with Marcus, was constructed on a foundation I could demolish whenever I chose. And I'm about to choose. Vera comes home at 3:30 p.m., which is earlier than she's been home in months. I hear her car in the driveway, the slam of the door that's become her signature sound of frustration, the click of her heels on our front walkway. She's moving fast, probably hoping to catch me off guard, to control the narrative before I have a chance to process what happened at her promotion speech. She doesn't know I've been processing this for 6 months. I'm sitting in the living room when she walks in, reading a cybersecurity journal and drinking the kind of expensive whiskey she used to complain about me buying. She stops in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's navy dress, but looking like she's been through a hurricane. We need to talk, she says, and her voice has that edge it gets when she's trying to sound authoritative, but feels her control slipping. I figured we might, I reply, not looking up from my magazine. How was your first day as senior marketing director? The silence stretches long enough that I finally glance up. She's staring at me with an expression I've never seen before, part fury, part fear, part something that might be respect if I didn't know her better. You planned this, she says. The whole thing, the box, the timing, everything. I planned to give my wife a gift at her promotion ceremony. I thought that was the supportive thing to do. Don't. Her voice cracks slightly. Don't pretend you don't know what you've done. Marcus has been arrested. The FBI seized our financial records. My mother's company is under investigation. That does sound complicated. She moves closer, and I can see the makeup that couldn't quite cover the evidence of her crying. How long have you known? This is the question I've been waiting for, the moment when she finally understands that her careful manipulation had been visible to me from the beginning. I close the magazine and meet her eyes. About the affair? 8 months. About the insider trading? 6 months. About your plan to frame me for securities fraud? 3 weeks. I stand up, and she takes an involuntary step backward. About the fact that you've been stealing my work and selling it to Marcus? 18 months, Vera. I've known for 18 months. The color drains from her face. That's impossible. You never said anything. You never acted like I knew my wife was planning to destroy my career and send me to prison? You're right. I probably should have brought that up over dinner. I walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where we'd planned to raise children, buy a bigger house, build a life together. I kept waiting for you to stop. I kept thinking maybe you'd realize what you were doing and come to your senses. Silas, you don't understand. Marcus said what? That I deserved it? That I was holding you back? That you were too good for a boring cybersecurity consultant who couldn't give you the lifestyle you wanted? She doesn't answer, which is answer enough. Here's what I understand, Vera. You met Marcus at that conference in Chicago 2 years ago. He was looking for someone with access to insider information, and you were looking for someone who could advance your career. The affair was just part of the business arrangement. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I have recordings of you discussing which of my clients would be most profitable to target. I have financial records showing the payments from his account to your mother's fake consulting company. I have hotel receipts, trading records, and email exchanges that lay out the entire conspiracy. She sinks into the chair I'd been occupying, her hands shaking as she processes the scope of what I know. What do you want? I want you to understand something, I say, turning back to face her. That promotion speech last night, when you told 200 people that I never had what it takes, that was the moment you stopped being my wife and became just another criminal I was investigating. We can fix this, she says, and there's desperation in her voice now. I can testify against Marcus, cooperate with the investigation. We can say I was coerced, that he threatened me if I didn't help him. I made a mistake, Silas. I got caught up in something I couldn't control, but we can work through this. We're married. We're supposed to support each other. I look at this woman I lived with for 8 years, shared a bed with, made plans with, and I feel nothing but a cold satisfaction that my plan is working exactly as I designed it. You're right about one thing, I tell her. We are married, which means I can't be compelled to testify against you in federal court. I smile, and she flinches. Lucky for you, I won't have to. You've already confessed to everything on the surveillance footage I've been collecting for the past 18 months. Her face goes white. What surveillance footage? The cameras in my office. The ones that recorded you photographing my computer screen, discussing your plans with Marcus, and bragging to your friends about how easy it was to manipulate your boring husband. I walk toward the door, then pause. Oh, and Vera? I've filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow morning. I leave her sitting in our living room, surrounded by the remnants of the life she thought she was so clever to destroy. Through the window, I can see news vans pulling up to Marcus's house 3 blocks away. The show is just getting started. 2 weeks after the promotion speech that ended Vera's career, I'm sitting in my lawyer's office reviewing divorce papers when Jason calls with an update that makes me smile for the first time in months. Marcus just pleaded guilty to securities fraud, he reports. His lawyer negotiated a cooperation agreement in exchange for a reduced sentence. 18 months in federal prison, full restitution to affected investors, and permanent ban from working in financial services. And Vera? Her case is more complicated. The prosecutor is treating her as the primary conspirator since the information came from her access to your files. Without Marcus's cooperation, she's looking at 3 to 5 years. I lean back in my chair, watching Seattle's skyline through the law office windows. The city looks different now, cleaner somehow, like a layer of grime has been washed away by the rain that's been falling steadily since the investigation began. There's something else, Jason continues. Vera's mother's consulting company filed for bankruptcy yesterday. The IRS is auditing every payment they received over the past 3 years. Turns out, they've been running similar schemes with other clients. Other clients? At least 6 other couples in similar situations. Wives with access to sensitive information, payments routed through fake consulting contracts, husbands who never suspected their marriages were actually business arrangements. He pauses. You weren't their first victim, Silas. You were just the first one smart enough to fight back. This revelation should make me feel better, like I was just unlucky rather than uniquely naive. Instead, it makes me angry in a way I haven't felt since I first discovered Vera's betrayal. How many other men are sitting in their offices right now, trusting their wives, building careers that are being systematically dismantled by the people who promise to love them? The media wants to interview you, Jason adds. They're calling it the biggest corporate espionage case in Seattle's history. Your documentation is being used as a textbook example of how to investigate financial fraud. No interviews. Silas, no interviews, no statements, no victory laps. This was never about publicity. What it was about is harder to explain, even to myself. Revenge is too simple a word for what I wanted. Justice doesn't capture it either. What I wanted was for Vera to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't build a life on lies and betrayal without eventually facing the truth. I wanted her to know what it felt like to have everything you've worked for stripped away by someone you trusted. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, walks back into the conference room with a stack of papers that represent the end of my marriage. The divorce will be final in 60 days, she reports. Since Vera's assets are frozen pending the criminal investigation, there won't be much to divide. The house, your retirement accounts, and the settlement from your wrongful termination lawsuit should leave you in good financial shape. Wrongful termination. Zenith FinTech fired you based on false allegations that you knew were fabricated by your wife. That's textbook wrongful termination with additional damages for emotional distress. She smiles. I'm estimating a settlement in the mid-6 figures, plus your legal fees. I sign the papers methodically, each signature feeling like closing a door on a part of my life I'll never get back. Not the marriage. That died the night I watched Vera photograph my computer screen. But the version of myself that believed in trust, partnership, and the idea that love could survive anything. That man is gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more careful about who he lets into his life. One more thing, Patricia adds as I prepare to leave. Vera's attorney contacted me yesterday. She wants to meet with you. Something about making amends. What did you tell him? That I'd pass along the message. The decision is yours. I think about this as I drive home through the Seattle rain, past the Zenith FinTech building where Vera's promotion plaque used to hang in the lobby, past the Marriott Harbor where she spent Tuesday evenings selling my work to her lover, past the courthouse where she'll eventually stand trial for destroying our marriage and my career. Part of me wants to hear what she has to say, to understand how she justified what she did, to get some kind of closure on the 8 years we spent together. But a larger part of me recognizes that conversation as another trap, another attempt to manipulate me into forgiveness or complicity. I've given Vera everything she's going to get from me. The rest is between her and the federal justice system. The meeting happens anyway 3 weeks later in the visiting room of the King County Correctional Facility, where Vera is being held pending trial. I didn't plan to come, but Patricia convinced me that hearing her final appeal might provide the closure I didn't know I needed. Vera looks smaller in the orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that makes her look younger and more vulnerable than the polished professional who stood at that podium 6 months ago. She's lost weight, and there are shadows under her eyes that makeup used to hide. "Thank you for coming," she says, settling into the plastic chair across from me. "I wasn't sure you would." I almost didn't. We sit in silence for a moment, surrounded by the low conversations of other inmates and their visitors, the institutional smell of disinfectant and desperation that seems to permeate every government building I've ever been in. I've had a lot of time to think, she begins, about what I did, about what we had, about how everything went so wrong. Have you figured it out? I think so. She looks down at her hands, which are folded on the metal table between us. I was angry, at you, at my career, at the life we were building together. It felt so small, so ordinary. Marcus offered me something bigger. He offered you money and status in exchange for betraying your husband. That's not bigger, Vera. That's just different. I know that now. She meets my eyes, and I see something there that might be genuine remorse. I know it doesn't matter, and I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to understand that I never meant for it to go as far as it did. You mean you never meant to get caught? I mean, I never meant to hurt you the way I did. The plan to frame you for insider trading, that was Marcus's idea. He said it was the only way to protect ourselves if the investigation got too close. And you went along with it. I went along with it. She nods, accepting responsibility in a way that would have meant something to me a year ago. I told myself it was temporary, that once we had enough money saved up, we'd disappear and you'd be cleared of the charges. But that was just another lie I told myself to justify what I was doing. I lean back in my chair, studying this woman I once loved, trying to reconcile the person sitting across from me with the calculating criminal I'd watched on months of surveillance footage. Why the promotion speech, I ask? Why humiliate me publicly when you were already planning to frame me? Because I wanted you to know. Her voice is barely above a whisper. I wanted you to understand that I was better than you, that I deserved more than what our marriage could give me. I wanted to hurt you the way I felt hurt every day we stayed together. And how do you feel now? She's quiet for a long time, long enough that I start to think she's not going to answer. When she finally speaks, her voice is different, smaller, more honest than I've heard it in years. Empty, she says. I feel empty. Everything I thought I wanted, the money, the recognition, the excitement of the affair, none of it was real. It was all just a way to avoid dealing with the fact that I was unhappy with myself, not with you. That's a convenient realization to have after you've been arrested. It's the truth. She leans forward slightly. Silas, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to know that the woman who stood at that podium and said those things about you, that wasn't really me. That was someone I became because I was too weak to face what I really wanted. What did you really want? I wanted to matter. I wanted to be important, to have people look at me and see someone worth respecting. I thought Marcus could give me that, but all he gave me was a way to destroy everything good in my life. I stand up, signaling that our conversation is over. There's nothing left to say, no revelation that will change what happened or make the betrayal hurt less. Vera made her choices, and now she's living with the consequences. For what it's worth, I tell her as I prepare to leave, you did matter. To me, you mattered more than anything. That's why this hurt so much. She starts to cry then, not the manipulative tears I'd seen her use to get her way during our marriage, but the genuine grief of someone who finally understands what they've lost. I walk out of the correctional facility and into the Seattle sunshine, feeling lighter than I have in months. Not because Vera apologized or showed remorse, but because I finally understand that her betrayal was never about me. It was about her own insecurity, her own dissatisfaction with a life that was actually pretty good if you bothered to appreciate it. 3 months later, Vera pleads guilty to conspiracy to commit securities fraud and is sentenced to 36 months in federal prison. Marcus serves 18 months and disappears into whatever life ex-convicts build for themselves after they've destroyed everything they once had. I keep the newspaper clipping of their sentencing in my desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what happens when you mistake cruelty for strength, betrayal for ambition, and revenge for justice. The promotion plaque that was supposed to mark the beginning of Vera's rise to corporate success sits in an evidence locker somewhere, gathering dust alongside the other artifacts of their failed conspiracy. I never did ask what happened to it. Some stories are better left unfinished.